Uh, Welcome. It's evening in Shanghai right now, and it's a Saturday. So, as you know, I was just trying to do something on my weekends, something to do with essentially arts, but something to do with a bit of web technology, a bit of technology in general. I'm not a hacker or a developer or a programmer myself. But I do actually try to convey my work pieces in somewhat culmination of all of these things. People call themselves media artists in that respect. I don't call myself any of these, not a designer, not an artist, or any of these. It's just like a curious mind, like trying to figure out ways in different ways possible, and especially simplest way possible, so that actually even novice like me can understand. Like if I can understand, like a lot of people on the globe out there who are actually their brain works much faster than mine, and like they can understand better. Um, this project I was doing is I feel is a very good way for artists actually to get data from the internet, like not generally just from one source and being dependent on a specific API, but like more like you can scrap anything. The way thing I'm going to mention right now is like a very general thing that you can. It's kind of an approach that I'm going to talk about, that you can actually employ in a lot of your works involving softwares and data from the web in general. So we're going to talk obviously a little bit about web scraping, but like not traditional web scraping. This is very important, like the digital literacy, especially for artists and new media artists and designers working with technology in general. Like not to be sitting behind and feel um, not so geeky about it. It's fine. You don't have to be geeky. You don't have to know all the plugins to make your command line beautiful. If you can execute something on command line, that's great for you because you are not a computer scientist in general. So a little bit about literacy of the vocabulary of all these things is important. So that's kind of like these are like the meta level uh, kind of things that I want to actually employ all the time through my works. And as I already mentioned before, like because when you start using an API, which is like application programming interface, actually that means this term means application programming interface. So it's something like when a website or a database has some sort of data or like something they have, and they want to release it to the people or want other people to use their information, they give a formatted version of it, which is other people can use and get the data and like implement in their own applications or softwares or whatever they're making, a bot or anything. But like when people start doing this, they actually lock out a lot of information that could be up there, could be kind of like a buggy experience for them, they might say, but like it's up there, it's out there, it's there on their server, but like it, you cannot access it through an API, but like you can actually access it from certain IP to the server or things like that. Um, so all the sources are sources of data. That's what I meant. Anything on the web you can actually scrap and do get the thing. I'm not a best web scrapper in the world, but like I looked up, and Python is a very good tool to do. You have like beautiful soup4 and all that stuff. So a lot of libraries out there like Scrappy, Beautiful Soup 4. That's the two most traditional, widely used scraping libraries for Python. Like there are even Chrome plugins of web. If you are not into programming, you can use to scrape data from there. Um, but what before actually I go that we want to do it differently, communicating between softwares and to communicating between different softwares is like Python is pretty lightweight and can handle a lot of things. And let's not keep all this trouble of scraping and analyzing and computation to processing and maintaining a bridge between processing and Python. Like you can use Ruby as well. My friend uses Ruby. That's fine, completely fine. So any other lightweight engine that can handle all this scraping and like other computation related to the web and like passing it on over solely for the visual representation onto a programming language like processing or open frameworks, or making, if you have to make music, pure data or max MSP, anything you want. So before going there, um, so this is a bash script that I wrote to execute both the Python file and the processing file. So Python will be scraping the data and passing it on to the processing. Um, Before you do that, if you want to make your uh, command file executable, you know what to do. I showed in the last post. It's just like chmod plus x and your file essentially, which is in our case openSat.py. py, openSat.command. So you click this one. I've already made this executable, so that's fine, and it'll be good to go. So here it's actually executing my Python file and the processing app, which I exported from the processing IDE essentially. And I learned a trick of actually using Python to make actually Python the executable direct py file and not doing it by other ways. So what I did was actually not a very clean job. So the way I did it, you go to your file and you make it in default to open with Python launcher essentially. So every time you double click it, it opens up with Python launcher rather than in the editor that you edited it with. And that's it. So right now I can just call the file from any script and it'll run and execute. So to give you an example sense of it, so you can see the preferences coming out here, and so this is the data that it's throwing me back. Now we will go of actually handling and why not APIs and why scraping and all that stuff. Let's open up the browser that I was doing it in. So this is the website that I'm actually scraping the data from. I'm actually tracking the ISS satellite, and we have, like, you can see the list of all the lower orbit satellites in there. What I did initially, I'm actually pretty surprised why they call themselves the openSats and they don't have an API, which is actually fine because I was not supposed to use the API anyways. They're not actually displaying the data on the web page anywhere. They're just showing the displacement of the satellites. So I tried to look for the values they're showing, if I could find it in the DOM in some element, but this wasn't the case. So I went to look in their JavaScript folder, and apparently after going through a lot of this, I actually figured out the satellite.js file, and there they have the latitude, longitude, timing, altitude, range, everything else. I'm more interested, for just to give you an example, in these two values, the lat and long. So console log and see if we could actually get those values. So if I have the lat printed here, let's just make it a little bit pretty. And let's do longitude. So should be now throwing us some data in the console. And if I save it and let's see, I hope. Okay, wow, great. So we have the latitude and longitude of the ISS satellite coming in our console right now. We can actually see these things. I mean, this is the value that obviously this PNG is actually using to move its locations, the coordinates on the screen, right? But then I was querying like how to actually scrape using Python any file from the JavaScript of a web page. And I figured out they have certain libraries like dry scrape, which is not the usual libraries that we use for Beautiful Soup 4 and Scrappy, I guess. So I tried to actually find a way of doing it, and it's actually doable. But then, like, I want to do it a much more simpler way and easier way. So I had a simple help from a friend, and he mentioned that obviously this is actually pinging some server somewhere, which is actually throwing him all the data here. So I went to the networks, and here we have a PHP script essentially running in their server, which is actually throwing kind of a file, which is a text file. Usually it's supposed to be JSON or XML, but like, who cares? They're using the text file, and they're scraping this text file, and using the latitude, longitude, you can see all the other data in this file. So if you open up this file to a new tab, you could actually see more clearly what it's doing. So it's actually throwing this latitude, longitude, and other values, altitude of all other satellites altogether, the time, the PNG, link to the PNG, the satellite image, and everything. So you can actually, so what I try to do is like actually make a card ping to that link and like get the value, store it in a single string, parse it, and get my required values essentially. And that's as simple as that. So I'm not going to go through the script page by page, line by line. It's there in the GitHub, well commented. If you have any questions, just like throw a question, just ask in the comments. So I'll just go now briefly to the Python script that I wrote to do this one, and we are actually using just the simple URL like to make the ping the link, essentially store the whole data in a single string, parse it through the substring to our required. This is where magic is done, and like just getting the data and like converting it into float, and then using the OSC library, which is PyOSC. Just Google it, and it's well documented how to install and everything. And using the PyOSC to actually open up a new port on the local network, and then send these two values, latitude and longitude. Now, any software, anything on the same network, on the same port, using OSC can access these two values. So it doesn't matter where your next app is written. It could be written in MaxMSP, it could be written in Pure Data, where I wrote most of my receiving end apps for making music or anything like that. But you can use processing or any other Python, whatever you are comfortable in. So then we wrote a simple processing script. Hope this opens up soon. And actually, I exported it, and now it's kind of a run executable app. But here is the script that we wrote. It has a very nifty small library called unfolding for displaying the maps as shapefiles. Just Google unfolding processing, you get all the informations there. And then using the OSC library that comes bundled with the processing, and the control P5 library that if you don't have, you should have. It's a very good library for the UI of if you're making applets using processing. And then calling all those textures, and here is a function actually that wrote, and which is actually getting the values. The first value is a float, putting it to a variable. Second is also a float, giving it to a variable, and that's it. And then I'm using all of these things to draw a marker on the screen, and controlling the zoom in and out of the map, and getting the altitude values as well, defining the radius of the map, the marker file, and that's it. That's kind of essentially it. Now I exported the file, and I have now two scripts essentially working together to make the visualization. So if I now go to the file, as I mentioned before, where it's invoking both the Python and the processing, it would see it's pinging. Now you can see like it is showing me the latitude and longitude that the Python script is scrapping, and it is giving it back to the processing over OSC here. And I would say I was pretty impressed with the unfoldings. Like they have 7, 8 already style sheets, or I mean like the style files, open maps from Google, from Yahoo, and every other place. And also you can make your own styles of the map in their unfolding SDK, and like make it a shapefile, and use an SQLite database library for accessing those files from within processing. It's well documented. Just Google unfolding and processing, and it will be directed to their websites. And here I can actually zoom in the map and see much more clearer where the satellite is right now currently, and it's over Australia and traveling up. So you can see very clearly its path. Probably next thing I'll do, maybe to make it visually more understandable and appealing, is like draw the tracings, and I don't know else right now what I'm planning to do with this thing, but that's like the general methodology, what I was telling to do, not to do very much of high computations from within processing, because depending on your system, it might crash. So if you're dealing with the web stuff and you are doing a lot of things, like a lot of APIs are there and libraries are there already wrapped for processing in Java in general, but like it's better not to have them dealing from within processing, but to pass it over to something else, some other language, and like using some networking method to communicate between these two. So I'll hang up here for this, and for my next blog we'll actually discuss something about Wireshark, and how to actually sniff some packets and inject even some packets within a local network and some other encrypted networks, and actually make some good cool data with those things. So till then, bye bye, have fun.